She felt him choose another. It wasn't a whisper or a rumor carried on the wind. It was the bond itself, that sacred thread woven between their souls, stretching, tearing, bleeding. Sable pressed her hand to her chest as the pain ripped through her, stealing her breath, buckling her knees. Somewhere in the great hall, surrounded by nobles and witnesses, Theron was speaking another woman's name, claiming another woman as his mate. And Sable felt every syllable like a blade through her heart. She should have known. A king could never truly belong to someone like her, a servant, an orphan, a nobody with no bloodline worth mentioning. Their stolen moments in moonlit corridors, the whispered promises, the way he'd held her as if she were the only thing anchoring him to this world. None of it mattered now. He had made his choice. So Sable made hers. She ran. Through the servants' passages, out the kitchen doors, past the guards who never noticed the quiet girl with the downcast eyes. She ran until the castle was a shadow behind her, until the forest swallowed her whole, until she collapsed against an ancient oak and sobbed until her throat was raw. She would not stay to watch him wed another. She would not stand in the shadows while another woman wore his mark, carried his children, ruled at his side. She would rather die in the wilderness than live with that agony. But as Sable disappeared into the darkness, something unexpected happened. Back in the great hall, in the middle of his declaration, Theron stopped speaking. His hand flew to his chest. His eyes went wide with sudden, inexplicable terror. Because the bond he thought he'd buried, the bond he thought he'd hidden, was screaming. She was running. And if he didn't find her, he would lose her forever. Neither of them understood yet that finding her would unravel every lie he'd been forced to live. The Great Hall of Valdren had never seen such a gathering. Every noble family within 300 miles had descended upon the castle to witness the Alpha King choose his queen. Banners hung from the vaulted ceilings, crimson and gold, the colors of the Morvain dynasty. Candles flickered in iron chandeliers, casting dancing shadows across faces painted with anticipation. At the far end of the hall, elevated on a dais of black marble, stood Theron. He was beautiful in the way storms were beautiful, dangerous, commanding, impossible to look away from. His dark hair fell past his shoulders, pushed back from a face that could have been carved by vengeful gods. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that spoke of centuries of warrior blood. Eyes the color of molten amber that saw everything and revealed nothing. But tonight, something was wrong. Those who knew him well, and there were precious few, might have noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers curled too tightly around the armrest of his throne, the slight tremor in his jaw, as if he were grinding his teeth against words that wanted to escape. No one noticed. They were too busy watching the woman beside him. Ioni Ravencourt stood at the foot of the dais, resplendent in a gown of silver silk that pooled around her like liquid moonlight. She was everything a queen should be: noble birth, flawless beauty, connections to the 3 most powerful packs in the Eastern Territories. Her smile was serene, confident, practiced. She had been preparing for this moment her entire life. "Lords and ladies of the realm," the high priest intoned, his voice echoing through the hall. "We gather tonight to witness a sacred bond. The Alpha King shall speak the name of his chosen mate, and she shall be marked before all as his queen, his partner, his eternal—" Theron stopped listening. His eyes were scanning the crowd, searching for a face he knew wouldn't be among the nobles. Searching for dark hair and darker eyes, for the quiet girl who served wine at feasts and vanished before anyone could notice her. For the woman who had somehow become the only thing that made his hollow existence bearable. Sable. He had told her not to come, had told her it would destroy them both to watch. But some desperate part of him had hoped she would disobey, had hoped she would appear in the shadows, just so he could look at her one last time. She wasn't there. "Your Majesty?" Theron blinked. The high priest was staring at him expectantly. So was every noble in the hall. So was Ioni, her serene smile faltering just slightly at the edges. "Speak the name," the high priest prompted gently. "Speak the name of your chosen mate." Theron's throat closed. He thought of his father's ultimatum, delivered 3 weeks ago in this very hall. "Choose Ioni Ravencourt, or we expose the servant girl. We drag her before the council. We execute her for seducing the king." He thought of his mother's cold eyes, his advisor's knowing smiles, and the trap that had closed around him before he'd even realized it existed. He thought of Sable's face the last time he'd seen her, the tears she'd tried to hide, the way she'd whispered, "I understand," when they both knew she didn't, when they both knew this was killing her. "Ioni," Theron said. The word came out hollow, empty, a corpse of a sound, but the hall erupted in applause. Ioni's smile widened into something triumphant. The high priest raised his hands in blessing, and somewhere deep in Theron's chest, something shattered. Pain exploded through him. Not physical, not exactly, but deeper. The bond. The secret bond he'd forged with Sable in the darkness of his chambers, the one no one was supposed to know about. The one that tied their souls together in ways that transcended mere words. It was screaming. She had felt it. She had felt him speak another woman's name. And she was running. "Your Majesty?" Ioni's voice pierced through the agony. She was staring at him with concern that didn't reach her eyes. "Is something wrong?" Everything, he wanted to scream. Everything is wrong. But before he could speak, before he could tear off this mask and chase after the only woman he'd ever loved, his mother's hand closed around his arm like a vice. "Smile," Queen Ravenna hissed in his ear. "You're scaring the court." Theron smiled. It was the most painful thing he'd ever done. The ceremony continued. Ioni was presented with the crown of the queen consort, a circlet of twisted silver that had once belonged to Theron's grandmother. She bowed gracefully. The crowd applauded again. Wine was served, music played, and the celebration spilled out into the castle grounds. Theron endured all of it. He danced with Ioni because he was expected to. He accepted congratulations from nobles whose names he couldn't remember. He raised his glass in toasts he didn't mean and laughed at jokes that weren't funny. And all the while, the bond pulsed with agony. She was moving. He could feel it. The thread between them stretching thinner with every passing moment. She was running northwest, toward the Blackwood Forest, toward the most dangerous territory in the realm. "Sable, stop. Please. Let me explain." But there was no answer. Either she couldn't hear him or she was refusing to listen. It was past midnight when Theron finally managed to escape. He slipped away from the celebration, ignoring the guards who tried to follow, and made his way to the servants' quarters. Her room was empty. Not just vacant, stripped bare. The few possessions she'd owned were gone. The narrow bed was made with military precision, as if she wanted to erase every trace of her existence. The only thing left was a single dried flower on the windowsill, a moon blossom, the kind that only bloomed in the palace gardens. He had given it to her the night they'd first kissed. Theron picked up the flower with trembling fingers. It crumbled to dust in his palm. She was gone, truly gone, and it was his fault. "Find her," he whispered to the darkness. Then louder to the guard who had followed despite his orders. "Wake the trackers. Send out the hunting parties. Search every village, every forest, and every mountain within 100 miles. The guard hesitated. "Your Majesty, the Queen Consort is asking for—" "I don't care what she's asking for." Theron's voice dropped to something dangerous. Something that made the guard take a step back. "Find the girl. Find her, or I will tear this kingdom apart stone by stone until I do." He didn't wait for a response. He was already moving, already shifting, bones cracking and reforming as the wolf surged to the surface. The Bond pulled him northwest, and the Alpha King ran into the night. 3 months earlier, the first time Sable saw him, she dropped a tray of wine glasses. It wasn't her fault. Not entirely. She had been serving at a minor feast, one of the dozens held each season for visiting dignitaries, and she had learned long ago to make herself invisible. Keep your head down. Don't make eye contact. Serve the wine. Clear the plates. Vanish before anyone could notice you existed. But then, he had walked in. Theron Morvain, Alpha King of Valdrin, who was supposed to be on a diplomatic mission in the Southern Territories. Who wasn't supposed to return for another month? Who was absolutely, definitely not supposed to stride into the feast hall looking like a god of war made flesh, his riding leathers still dusty from the road, his amber eyes scanning the crowd as if searching for something. Those eyes had landed on her, and Sable had frozen. The tray had tilted. The glasses had fallen. The crash had echoed through the suddenly silent hall, and every noble head had turned to stare at the clumsy servant girl now kneeling in a puddle of red wine. "Forgive me," she'd whispered, her cheeks burning with humiliation. "Forgive me, I'll clean this immediately, Leave it." His voice, deep and smooth, with an edge of authority that made her wolf instincts want to bare her throat in submission. She had looked up without meaning to, and found him standing directly above her. He was even more terrifying up close. More beautiful, too, which seemed unfair. The candlelight caught the sharp planes of his face, the fullness of his lips, and the intensity of his gaze. He was looking at her as if she were a puzzle he couldn't solve. "What's your name?" he asked. Sable, Your Majesty." Sable. He said it slowly, as if tasting the syllables. Then he did something utterly unexpected. He knelt beside her and began picking up the broken glass with his bare hands. The hall went completely silent. Kings did not kneel. Kings did not touch broken glass. Kings certainly did not help servant girls clean up their messes. But there he was, gathering shards into his palm as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You'll cut yourself," Sable whispered, horrified. "I heal fast." His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You're shaking." I'm not." "You are." He stood, offering her his hand. His palm was indeed bleeding, a thin line of red across the calloused skin. "Come, I'll escort you to the healers." "Your Majesty, I couldn't possibly." That wasn't a request. So Sable had taken his hand, and something had happened, something neither of them expected. A spark, a current, a feeling like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. He had felt it too. She could tell by the way his eyes widened, the way his grip tightened on her fingers, the way he inhaled sharply as if catching a scent he'd been searching for his entire life. "Who are you?" he breathed. "Nobody, Your Majesty." "No." His thumb brushed across her knuckles, leaving trails of fire in its wake. "No, I don't think you are." They met in secret after that. It began with stolen glances, a look across a crowded hall, a brush of fingers when she served his wine. Then came the notes, slipped beneath her door in handwriting she learned to recognize. "Meet me in the East Garden at midnight. Meet me in the library after the feast. Meet me anywhere. Just meet me." She should have refused. Every instinct screamed that this was dangerous, forbidden, and impossible. He was the Alpha King. She was a nameless orphan who scrubbed floors and carried trays. Wolves of their stations didn't mix, couldn't mix, without catastrophic consequences. But Sable had never felt anything like this before. When she was with Theron, the constant ache of loneliness that had defined her existence simply stopped. He made her laugh. He listened when she spoke. Really listened, as if her thoughts mattered. He told her about the crushing weight of the crown, the advisors who manipulated him, the mother who had never shown him warmth. And slowly, carefully, she told him about herself. The orphanage where she'd grown up, the beatings she'd endured from the headmistress who hated her for reasons Sable never understood. The day she'd escaped and walked for 3 days without food or water until she reached the castle and begged for any work they could give her. The strange abilities she sometimes exhibited, the way she could sense emotions, the way animals seemed drawn to her, the way she occasionally knew things before they happened. "You're special," Theron said one night, tracing the curve of her cheek in the moonlight. "More special than you know." "I'm nobody." "You're everything." He kissed her then, gently, reverently, as if she were something precious that might break. "You're everything, Sable, and I will never let anyone hurt you again." She believed him. That was her mistake. The bond happened 2 months later. Neither of them planned it. They had been careful, so careful, to keep their relationship purely emotional. A mating bond would be detected by the pack elders, would expose their secret, and would bring down consequences neither of them could survive. But that night, in his chambers, with moonlight streaming through the windows and his body pressed against hers, something had shifted. Sable had looked into his eyes and seen her entire future reflected there. And Theron had whispered words that no king should speak to a servant, words of devotion, of permanence, of forever. The bond had snapped into place like a lock clicking shut. They had both felt it. The sudden, overwhelming connection that went beyond flesh, beyond mind, into the very essence of their souls. She was his. He was hers. Nothing could ever undo what they had become. "We have to tell them," Sable said afterward, trembling in his arms. "We have to—" "No." Theron's voice was firm. "Not yet. My mother, the council, they'll never accept this. They'll hurt you, Sable. They'll destroy you to get to me." "Then what do we do?" He pulled her closer, his lips against her hair. "We wait. I'll find a way. I'll protect you, I swear it. Just give me time." So she had waited, and 3 weeks later she had watched him claim another woman as his mate. She never knew the truth, that his mother had discovered everything, that she had threatened to have Sable executed for treason, that Theron had agreed to the political match only because it was the sole way to keep the woman he loved alive. She never knew that he had been trying to find a way back to her. All she knew was the agony of the bond stretching as he spoke Ioni's name. All she knew was betrayal. So she ran. Dawn broke over Valdrin in shades of blood and gold. Theron had not slept. He had not stopped. For 6 hours he had run in wolf form through forests and fields, following the fading thread of the bond, pushing his body past exhaustion into something primal and desperate. She was still moving, still running, still putting distance between them. And the bond was growing weaker. That terrified him more than anything. A mating bond shouldn't weaken. It should be permanent, unbreakable, eternal. But he could feel theirs fraying at the edges, as if her pain was actively severing the connection, as if she was trying to cut him out of her soul. "Sable, please, let me explain. Let me—" Nothing. Either she couldn't hear him through the bond, or she was refusing to respond. By the time he returned to the castle, still in wolf form, the sun was fully risen and the hunt was underway. 12 trackers waited in the courtyard. They were the best in the kingdom, wolves with supernatural senses who could follow a scent trail 3 days old through a rainstorm. Behind them stood his captain of the guard, a massive warrior named Corvin Blackmere, whose scarred face showed no emotion. "Report," Theron growled, shifting back to human form. A servant rushed forward with a cloak to cover his nakedness. Corvin stepped forward. "We've confirmed she left through the eastern servants' gate approximately 2 hours after the ceremony began. She took nothing but the clothes on her back. Direction? Northwest, toward the Blackwood. Theron's blood ran cold. The Blackwood forest was vast, ancient, and deadly. Rogue wolves made their homes there, exiles and criminals who had been cast out of civilized packs. Worse things lurked in its depths, too. Things that had no names, only legends. No lone Omega could survive in the Blackwood. She's trying to disappear, Corvin said quietly. Permanently. She won't succeed. Theron's voice was ice. I want every tracker in the field within the hour. Send riders to the border outposts. No one matching her description leaves the kingdom. And send word to the Blackwood settlements. Whoever finds her and brings her to me unharmed will be rewarded beyond their wildest dreams. Corvin hesitated. Your Majesty, the Queen Consort has been asking for you. She's concerned about your absence last night. Let her be concerned. Your mother has also requested. I don't care what my mother requested. Theron stepped closer to his captain, and something dangerous flickered in his amber eyes. A woman is missing, Corvin. A woman who matters. Find her, or I will replace every tracker in this kingdom with wolves who can actually do their jobs. Corvin bowed his head. Yes, Your Majesty. The trackers dispersed. Theron stood alone in the courtyard, the morning sun warm on his face, the bond cold and thin in his chest. Hold on, Sable, I'm coming. By midday, the rumors had begun to spread. The king was hunting someone. Not a criminal, not an enemy. A servant girl. A nobody. He had abandoned his new queen consort on their first morning as mates to personally lead search parties into the wilderness. The court was scandalized. The council was furious. And Queen Ravenna Morvain was absolutely livid. Have you lost your mind? She found him in the war room, bent over a map of the Blackwood forest, marking possible routes with a piece of charcoal. He didn't look up when she entered. Mother. Don't mother me. Ravenna swept across the room, her silver gown trailing behind her like a thundercloud. She was beautiful in the way poisonous flowers were beautiful, elegant, cold, and deadly. You're making a spectacle of yourself, of this family, of the crown. A woman is missing. A servant is missing, one of hundreds. Why do you care? Theron's hand tightened on the charcoal until it cracked. He still didn't look at her. You know why. Silence fell. Heavy. Dangerous. So it's true, Ravenna said softly. You formed a bond with that creature, despite everything I did to prevent it. Despite the match I arranged to save you from your own foolishness. The match you forced on me. The match that was supposed to make you forget her. Ravenna's voice rose to something nearly shrill. Ioni is perfect. Noble, beautiful, connected. She would have made you happy if you'd given her a chance. Happy? Theron laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You think I could ever be happy with someone I don't love? With someone who isn't? He stopped himself. But the damage was done. Isn't what? Ravenna's eyes narrowed. Isn't your precious servant girl? Isn't the mongrel with no bloodline, no status, and no value to this family? Don't call her that. I'll call her whatever I please. She's a disease, Theron. A corruption. And you should be grateful I'm removing her from your life before she destroys everything we've built. Theron went very still. What did you say? Too late, Ravenna realized her mistake, but she was too proud to retreat. Do you think I didn't know she would run? A cruel smile curved her lips. Do you think I didn't make sure she knew exactly what you were choosing? I had one of my ladies deliver a personal message to her quarters before the ceremony, a detailed description of your future with Ioni, the children you would have, the life she would never share. The world went red. When Theron's vision cleared, his hand was around his mother's throat, and her back was pressed against the stone wall. Her eyes were wide with terror, perhaps the first genuine emotion she'd shown in years. You drove her away, he said, his voice barely human. You wanted her gone, so you broke her heart. I saved you. You destroyed everything. He released her with a snarl. Ravenna crumpled to the floor, gasping for breath. If anything happens to her, if she's hurt, if she's dead, I will tear this kingdom apart, starting with you. He was gone before she could respond. The forest was darker than Sable remembered. She had been walking for what felt like days, though it might have only been hours. Time moved strangely here, where the trees grew so thick that sunlight barely penetrated the canopy. Strange sounds echoed in the distance, howls that didn't quite sound like wolves, rustling that could have been wind or something hunting. She didn't care. Let the Blackwood take her. Let the monsters have her. It would be easier than living with this pain, this constant, crushing agony of feeling Theron through the bond while knowing he belonged to someone else. She had tried to sever the connection, had clawed at it mentally, had screamed at it to break. But it persisted, stubborn and eternal, reminding her with every heartbeat that she was tied to a man who had chosen another. Sable. She stumbled. His voice, distant, desperate, echoed through the bond. Please, let me explain. Let me... No. She threw all her pain, all her rage, all her heartbreak into that single word and felt the bond tremble with the force of it. Then she slammed a wall between them, something she didn't know she could do, something instinctive and vicious, and the connection went silent. The relief lasted only a moment. Then the loneliness crashed over her like a wave, and Sable collapsed against a tree, her chest heaving with silent grief. She didn't know how long she stayed there, long enough that the light changed, shifting from dim gray to dimmer charcoal. Long enough that her tears ran dry and her throat ached. Long enough that she didn't hear the footsteps approaching until it was too late. Well, what do we have here? Sable's head snapped up. 3 wolves stood at the edge of a small clearing. No, not wolves. Rogues. She could tell by their ragged appearance, their feral eyes, and the scars that marked them as survivors of violence. The one who had spoken was the largest, a brute with a shaved head and a smile that made her skin crawl. A pretty little thing, he continued, stepping closer. Lost in the Blackwood all alone. Didn't anyone tell you it is dangerous here? Sable scrambled to her feet. Her wolf was weak. She'd never been a fighter, had never needed to be, but she bared her teeth anyway. Stay back. Oh, she's feisty. The rogue laughed. His companions laughed with him. I like feisty, more fun to break. He lunged, and everything exploded into chaos. Sable didn't see where the 4th wolf came from. One moment she was bracing for impact, and the next, a massive gray shape had slammed into her attacker, sending him crashing into a tree with a sickening crack. The other 2 rogues snarled and charged, but the gray wolf met them with brutal efficiency, a flash of fangs, a spray of blood, and then silence. 3 bodies lay motionless on the forest floor. The gray wolf turned toward her, and Sable's breath seized in her chest. It wasn't Theron. The eyes were wrong. Blue instead of amber, cold instead of burning. But there was something familiar about the way it stood, something almost protective. The wolf shifted, bones cracking and reforming until a man stood in its place. He was tall and lean, with silver-gray hair despite a face that couldn't be older than 30. His eyes held a weariness that spoke of centuries. You're far from home, little Omega, he said, and you're being hunted. I know. Sable's voice shook. I don't care. You should. The stranger tilted his head, studying her. The Alpha King has offered a fortune for your return. Every tracker in the kingdom is searching for you. Her chest tightened painfully. He has a mate. He doesn't need me. And yet he's tearing his kingdom apart to find you. The stranger stepped closer, and Sable saw something shift in his expression. Recognition, perhaps, or something older. Tell me, girl, do you know what you are? I'm nobody. No. His lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. No, you're far more than that. And when the king finds you, and he will find you, everything is going to change. He extended his hand. Come with me. I can hide you. I can teach you what you really are. His blue eyes glittered in the fading light. Or you can stay here and wait for the wolves to catch up. Your choice. Sable looked at his hand, looked at the bodies on the ground, looked at the darkening forest around her. She thought of Theron, of the bond still pulsing weakly in her chest despite the wall she'd built, of the pain she would feel when she saw him again with Ioni at his side. She took the stranger's hand and disappeared deeper into the blackwood. Miles away, in the heart of the forest, Theron froze mid-stride. The bond, already thin, already fraying, had just vanished completely. Not weakened, not blocked, gone, as if she had ceased to exist. No, he whispered. Then, louder, a roar that sent birds fleeing from the trees. No! He shifted and ran, faster than he'd ever run before, chasing the last echo of her presence. But there was nothing there. Nothing but darkness, and silence, and the terrible certainty that he was already too late. 2 weeks had passed since the night the bond went silent. 2 weeks of searching, and Theron had found nothing. He stood at the edge of a ravine deep in the blackwood, staring down at the churning river below. His trackers had followed her scent to this point and then lost it completely, as if she had simply walked to the edge and vanished into thin air. Or jumped. He refused to consider that possibility. Your Majesty. Corvin approached carefully, the way one might approach a wounded predator. The men need rest. We've been running for 3 days straight without stopping. Then let them rest. You need rest as well. I need to find her. Theron's voice was hollow. He hadn't slept more than a few hours since the night of the ceremony. His wolf was fraying at the edges, driven half-mad by the severed bond and the relentless chase. There has to be something, a trail, a sign, something. Corvin was quiet for a long moment. Then, perhaps she doesn't want to be found. Theron turned on him with amber eyes that had gone nearly feral. She ran because she was lied to. She ran because my mother poisoned her against me. When I find her, and I will find her, I will explain everything. She'll understand. And if she doesn't? The question hung in the air like a blade. She will, Theron said finally. But even he could hear the doubt in his own voice. She has to. Back at the castle, things were falling apart. Ioni Ravencourt had expected many things from her marriage to the Alpha King. Power, prestige, a husband who would worship her beauty and defer to her wisdom. What she had not expected was to be abandoned on her wedding night for a servant girl no one had ever heard of. This is humiliating, she hissed to her mother through gritted teeth. They were walking through the castle gardens, maintaining the pretense of a casual stroll while servants watched from every corner. He hasn't touched me, hasn't even looked at me. The entire court is whispering. Lady Maven Ravencourt was a thin woman with sharp features and sharper ambitions. She had spent 20 years positioning her daughter for this match, and she was not about to see it crumble. Patience, she murmured. The servant girl will be found eventually. She'll be eliminated quietly, and the king will have no choice but to turn his attention to you. And if she's not found? Then we make sure she's found. Lady Maven's smile was cold. I have agents in the Blackwood, wolves who owe me favors. If the king's trackers fail, mine will not. Ioni studied her mother's face. You mean to kill her? I mean to solve a problem. Lady Maven patted her daughter's hand. Don't trouble yourself with the details, darling. Just focus on being the perfect queen. The rest will take care of itself. But Ione wasn't so sure. She had seen the way Theron looked when he spoke of the missing girl, had felt the bond between them, faint but unmistakable, during the ceremony. Whatever connection existed between the king and his servant, it was stronger than anything Ioni could hope to compete with. Unless, of course, that connection was permanently severed. Find her, Ione said quietly. Find her and make sure she never comes back. Lady Maven's smile widened. Consider it done. Deep in the Blackwood, in a cavern hidden behind a waterfall, Sable was learning what she really was. The stranger had introduced himself as Calyx. He claimed to be an elder, one of the ancient wolves who had lived for centuries, watching the rise and fall of kingdoms, the birth and death of bloodlines. He lived alone in the forest, a hermit by choice, and he had recognized something in Sable the moment he saw her. "You're not an Omega," he said on the third night, as they sat by a small fire in his cave. "At least, not entirely. Your wolf is different." Sable wrapped her arms around her knees. "Different how?" "Show me your eyes." "My eyes." "Close them. Focus on your wolf. Let her rise to the surface, not to shift, but to see through you." Sable hesitated, then obeyed. She had always felt her wolf as a separate presence, a wild thing that lived in the back of her mind and occasionally stirred in response to strong emotions. Now she called to it deliberately, inviting it forward. The wolf responded. It rose through her like a tide, filling her consciousness with instincts and sensations she couldn't name. She felt stronger suddenly, more aware. Every sound in the cave became crystal clear. The crackle of the fire, the drip of water, the steady beat of Calyx's ancient heart. "Now open your eyes." Sable opened them and gasped. The cave was transformed. Colors she'd never seen before painted the walls, shimmering auras that seemed to pulse with life. She could see the heat rising from the fire as ribbons of orange and gold. Could see Calyx's energy surrounding him like a silver shroud. "What is this?" she breathed. "The sight." Calyx's voice was soft with wonder. "A gift that hasn't appeared in the wolf bloodlines for nearly 500 years. You can see truth, girl. See through lies, through illusions, through the masks that others wear." He leaned closer, his blue eyes intense. "And that is not all you can do." "What else?" The wolves who possessed the sight in ancient times were called Veilwalkers. They could not only see truth, they could manipulate the bonds between wolves. Strengthen them. Weaken them. He paused. Sever them entirely. Sable's blood ran cold. Sever bonds? Yes. It's why your bond with the Alpha King felt so unstable when you ran. You were unconsciously tearing at it, trying to free yourself. Calyx tilted his head. "Did you not wonder why it weakened so quickly? Normal bonds don't do that. They're meant to be eternal." She thought of the wall she'd built between herself and Theron. The way the bond had gone silent after she'd pushed him away. She had assumed it was pain, or distance, or sheer force of will. She had never considered that she might be destroying it herself. "Why are you telling me this?" Sable asked. "Why save me? Why help me?" Calyx was quiet for a long moment. The fire crackled between them, casting dancing shadows on the cave walls. "Because 500 years ago," he said finally, "I knew another Veilwalker. A woman with your exact gifts. She was my mate." "What happened to her?" His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went very dark. The Alpha King of that era happened to her. When he discovered what she could do, that she could sever the bonds that held his pack together, he had her executed. Burned alive in front of the entire kingdom. Calyx's voice was flat. "I watched her die, and I swore that if I ever found another Veilwalker, I would protect them, no matter the cost." Sable stared at him. "You think Theron would do the same to me?" "I think all kings are the same." Calyx rose, turning away from the fire. "Power corrupts, girl, and the power to sever bonds is the greatest threat a king can face. If Theron Morvain discovers what you are, he will not love you for it. He will fear you. You don't know him. I know his bloodline. I know his ancestors. Calyx looked back at her, and his eyes held 5 centuries of grief. I know what they're capable of. Sable wanted to argue, wanted to defend Theron, to insist that he was different, that he would never hurt her. But the memory of his voice speaking Ioni's name, the agony of the bond stretching as he chose another, silenced her. Maybe Calyx was right. Maybe all kings were the same. Miles away, in a village at the edge of the Blackwood, Theron finally found a clue. An innkeeper remembered a girl matching Sable's description. Dark hair, dark eyes, traveling alone. She had come through nearly 2 weeks ago, looking exhausted and frightened. She had asked about paths deeper into the forest, paths that led to the old territories, where the ancient wolves were rumored to live. Did she say where she was going? Theron demanded. The innkeeper shook his head. Just asked about the waterfall caves, the ones behind the Serpent's Drop. Theron's pulse spiked. The Serpent's Drop. He knew those caves, had explored them as a boy, before his father's death had thrust him onto the throne. They were hidden, defensible, and impossible to find unless you knew exactly where to look. She was there. She had to be. He left gold on the counter and ran. The cave entrance was exactly as he remembered, a narrow crack in the rock face, hidden behind the thundering curtain of the waterfall. Theron shifted to human form and squeezed through, adrenaline flooding his veins. The tunnel opened into a larger cavern. A fire burned in the center, recently abandoned. The coals still glowed faintly orange. Someone had been here. Recently. He scanned the space with wild eyes, saw a bedroll in the corner, saw a cup of water, still half full, saw a moon blossom, pressed flat and dried, tucked beneath a stone. His moon blossom. The one he'd given her. The one she'd left behind in her room. She had kept it after all. Sable, he whispered. His voice cracked on her name. Sable, I know you're here. Please. Just let me explain. Silence. Then, from the shadows at the far end of the cave, a figure emerged. Not Sable. A man. Tall, silver-haired, ancient eyes burning with cold fury. She's not here, Calyx said. And if you know what's good for you, Alpha King, you'll leave the same way you came. Theron bared his teeth. Where is she? Safe. Far from you. I need to see her. You forfeited that right when you chose another mate. Calyx stepped forward, and despite his age, there was a predator's grace in his movement. She came to me broken, boy. Shattered by your betrayal. I've spent 2 weeks putting her back together. I won't let you destroy her again. I didn't betray her. Theron's voice shook with emotion he couldn't contain. My mother? She threatened to execute Sable for treason. The only way to keep her alive was to pretend to accept the political match. I was trying to protect her. Calyx's expression didn't change. A convenient story. It's the truth. And why should I believe the word of a Morvain? The elder's voice dripped with venom. Your ancestor murdered my mate, burned her alive because he feared what she could do. Your bloodline is built on the corpses of wolves you considered threats. Theron went still. Your mate? What are you talking about? 500 years ago, the Alpha King discovered a woman with unique abilities. Abilities that frightened him. Calyx's eyes bored into Theron's. So he had her executed, and now history is repeating itself. I would never hurt Sable. You already have. The words landed like a blow, because Calyx was right. Theron had hurt her. Had watched her run into the night while he stood in that cursed hall speaking another woman's name. Had failed to protect her from his mother's cruelty. Let me see her, he said quietly. Just for a moment. Let me explain, and if she still wants me to leave, I'll go. I swear it on my bloodline. Calyx studied him for a long moment. The fire crackled. The waterfall roared in the distance. Finally, the elder spoke. She's not here. I moved her when I sensed you approaching. He raised a hand, stopping Theron's protest. But I will deliver a message. Write what you wish to say, and I will give it to her. If she chooses to respond, that is her decision, not yours. It wasn't enough. It was nowhere near enough. But it was something. Theron found a scrap of parchment and charcoal by the fire. His hand shook as he wrote. Words he'd been desperate to say for 2 weeks. Words that might be his only chance to reach her. When he finished, he handed the letter to Calix. Please, he said. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her everything I did was to keep her safe. Calix took the letter without a word, and Theron walked back into the night, praying it wasn't too late. 3 more weeks passed. Sable read Theron's letter 17 times. She had memorized every word, every smudged line of charcoal, every place where his hand had trembled against the parchment. My love, I know you hate me. You have every right. But I need you to understand. I never chose Ioni. She was forced upon me by my mother's threats against your life. Execute you for treason, she said. Burn you as a seductress who corrupted the king. I couldn't let that happen. I would rather lose you than watch you die. The bond we share is real. It has always been real. I feel it even now, faint and fragile, but still there, still calling me to you. If you can forgive me, come back. I will tear down every obstacle between us. I will defy my mother, my council, my entire kingdom. I will burn it all to the ground if that's what it takes. But if you cannot forgive me, if the pain I caused is too great, then I will respect your choice. I will let you go, even if it destroys me. Just know this. I have loved you since the moment you dropped that tray of wine glasses. I will love you until my last breath. And nothing, not politics, not duty, not the crown itself, will ever change that. Yours eternally, Theron. Sable pressed the letter to her chest, emotion swelling until she could barely breathe. Calix watched from across the fire, his expression unreadable. You don't believe him? I don't know what to believe. She blinked rapidly, forcing back the burning in her eyes. He sounded so sincere, but how can I trust anything after what happened? You could use your gift. Sable looked up sharply. Over the past weeks, Calix had been training her to control the sight, to activate it at will, to read the truth in people's words and intentions. She had made progress, but the ability still frightened her. You mean, look through the bond? If any part of your connection remains, you could sense his emotions directly, know beyond doubt whether his words are true. It was tempting. So tempting. But I blocked the bond, Sable said. I put a wall between us. I don't know if I can take it down. You built the wall. You can remove it. Calix's voice was gentle. The question is whether you want to. Did she? Want to feel Theron again, after weeks of silence? Want to know, with absolute certainty, whether he had betrayed her or tried to save her? The answer, she realized, was yes. Whatever the truth was, she needed to know. Sable closed her eyes, found the wall she'd constructed in the depths of her mind. A barrier of pain and rage, solid as stone. Slowly, carefully, she began to dismantle it. The first crack sent a shockwave through her. Emotions flooded in. Not her own, but Theron's. Grief so profound it stole her breath. Guilt that clawed like knives. Longing so intense it bordered on madness. And beneath it all, steady as a heartbeat, love. Pure, overwhelming, unchanging love. He was telling the truth. Every word. Sable gasped and opened her eyes. Her vision blurred with moisture she couldn't control. He loves me, she whispered. He really loves me. Calix's expression flickered, something that might have been surprise or disappointment. Then you've made your choice. I need to go back. I need to... Wait. The elder held up a hand. Before you rush into anything, you need to understand what returning means. You are a Veilwalker, Sable. The moment the king discovers your abilities, everything changes. He may love you now, but can you be certain he'll feel the same when he learns you can sever the bonds that hold his pack together? Sable hesitated. Theron isn't like his ancestors. Perhaps. Or perhaps you simply want to believe that because you love him. Calyx rose, pacing toward the cave entrance. I am not trying to keep you prisoner. If you wish to return to him, I will not stop you. But I ask that you wait. Learn to control your powers fully. Understand what you are before you reveal it to anyone else. How long? A few more weeks. Perhaps a month. He turned back to face her. Give yourself time to think clearly, without the bond clouding your judgment. If your feelings remain unchanged after that, then go to him with my blessing. It was reasonable. Sable knew it was reasonable. But every fiber of her being was screaming to run to Theron right now, to throw herself into his arms and never let go. 1 month, she agreed reluctantly. But then I'm leaving. With or without your blessing. Calyx inclined his head. 1 month. Back at the castle, Theron was falling apart. He had returned from the Blackwood with renewed hope. Calyx had agreed to deliver his letter. Surely Sable would read it. Surely she would understand. Surely she would come back to him. But days passed. Then weeks. And still, nothing. No message. No sign. No indication that she had received his words at all. His advisors whispered that he was going mad. Perhaps they were right. He barely ate, barely slept, spent his nights pacing the castle corridors like a ghost, haunting the places where they used to meet in secret. The East Garden, overgrown now with weeds. The library alcove where they'd shared their first kiss. Her empty room, still stripped bare, still echoing with her absence. The kingdom noticed. The kingdom talked. The king is enchanted, some said. The servant girl must have been a witch. No, others argued. He's simply lost his mind. The crown has broken him. Ioni certainly believed the latter. Her patience had worn thin weeks ago, and now it had shattered entirely. This is absurd, she said to her mother during one of their private meetings. I'm supposed to be queen, and yet I have no husband, no marking, no children. The court is starting to wonder if the marriage is even valid. Lady Maven's expression was grave. My agents have found nothing. The girl has vanished completely. Either she's dead, or someone is hiding her very well. Then find whoever's hiding her and eliminate them both. It's not that simple. The Blackwood is vast, and my wolves report strange things in its depths. Ancient powers, creatures that shouldn't exist. Lady Maven lowered her voice. There are rumors of an elder living in the old territories, a wolf who has survived for centuries. If he's protecting the girl, I don't care about rumors. Ioni's eyes were hard. I care about results. Find the girl, kill her, do whatever it takes to make my husband look at me. Lady Maven studied her daughter's face, saw the desperation beneath the fury, the heartbreak beneath the pride. There may be another way, she said slowly. A way that doesn't require finding the girl at all. What do you mean? The king is sick with longing for her. His wolf is dying without its mate. Lady Maven's smile was thin and cruel. But what if we could accelerate that process? Make him so ill that he has no choice but to accept a new bond or die. Ioni's breath hitched. You mean poison him? Nothing so crude. There are old rituals, dark magic, that can sever a mating bond by force. It's painful, possibly lethal to one or both parties. But if the servant girl's bond is destroyed, the king will have no choice but to form a new one. Lady Maven leaned closer. With you. It was monstrous. It was cruel. It was everything Ioni had been raised to despise. But she was desperate. Do it, she whispered. Whatever it takes. Do it. The ritual required preparation. Lady Maven sent for a witch from the southern territories, a crone who dealt in forbidden magic, who had been exiled from civilized pacts for practices too dark to name. She arrived at the castle in secret, smuggled through the servants' entrance in the dead of night. You want to sever a mate bond? The witch's voice was like gravel scraping across bone. It can be done, but the cost will be high. Name your price, Ioni said. Not gold, not land. The witch's milky eyes seemed to look through Ioni rather than at her. The ritual requires sacrifice, blood willingly given by someone who loves the target. The king has no one who loves him. His mother despises him. His mate is missing. Then find someone. The witch smiled, revealing teeth filed to points. Or the ritual will fail. Ioni turned to her mother. Lady Maven's expression was calculating. There is one option, she said slowly. The servant girl's bond still exists. If we could capture her, use her blood as the sacrifice. Killing her would sever the bond anyway. Not kill. Draw blood. Enough to fuel the ritual. Lady Maven's eyes gleamed. Then we release her. Let her watch from afar as her bond is destroyed, as her king is given to another woman. The witch cackled. Cruel. I like it. Ioni felt a flicker of something. Conscience, perhaps, or simple human decency. But it was quickly swallowed by her desperation. Find her, she ordered. Bring her to me. The attack came at dawn, 3 weeks into her month of waiting. Sable was gathering herbs near the waterfall when she heard the howls, not the wild calls of forest wolves, but coordinated signals. A hunting party. Calyx! She screamed, but the word barely left her lips before they were upon her. 5 wolves burst from the underbrush surrounding her in seconds. They were trained. She could tell by their formation, their precision. These weren't rogues or exiles. These were soldiers. Sable shifted instinctively, her wolf exploding to the surface in a rush of fur and fangs. But she had never been a fighter, and against 5 trained warriors, she stood no chance. They brought her down within minutes. When she woke, she was in chains. Cold iron bit into her wrists and ankles, suppressing her wolf, leaving her weak and human and utterly helpless. She was in a stone room, a dungeon, she realized, with no windows and a single heavy door. The door opened. A woman entered. Beautiful, elegant, dressed in silks that cost more than Sable would earn in a lifetime. Her eyes were cold and calculating, her smile sharp enough to cut. So, Ioni Ravencourt said, you're the servant girl who's caused so much trouble. Sable said nothing. Her pulse spiked, her mind racing. How had they found her? What did they want? Nothing to say? Ioni circled her slowly like a predator examining prey. No begging? No pleading? What do you want? I want my husband. Ioni stopped in front of her, tilting Sable's chin up with one manicured finger. You've stolen his heart, his mind, his wolf, and I want it back. You can't make someone love you. No. Ioni's smile widened. But I can remove the obstacle that's preventing him from trying. She gestured, and the door opened again. An old woman shuffled in. A witch, Sable realized with horror. The crone's milky eyes fixed on her, and something ancient and hungry stirred behind them. Is this the one? The witch rasped. This is her, the king's secret mate. The witch shuffled closer, reaching out with gnarled fingers. Sable tried to pull away, but the chains held her fast. Strong bond, the crone muttered. Very strong, but damaged. She's been tearing at it herself. Ion's eyes sharpened. Can you sever it? With her blood, yes. It will take time. The ritual is complex. The witch's pointed teeth glinted in the torchlight. And it will be unpleasant. I don't care about her comfort. Ioni turned away. Begin whenever you're ready. Wait. Sable's voice cracked. Please. You don't understand what you're doing. Ioni paused at the door. The bond between Theron and me, it's not natural. It's not normal. Sable was grasping at straws, desperate to buy time. I have abilities. Abilities that could be dangerous to anyone who tries to interfere with the bond. Abilities? Ioni laughed. What abilities could a servant girl possibly have? Sable closed her eyes, called upon the sight. It rose within her, filling her vision with colors and truths. She saw Ioni's aura, dark with jealousy, brittle with insecurity, shot through with genuine pain. She saw the witch's essence, ancient and corrupted, steeped in decades of dark magic. She saw the bonds connecting them, thin threads of obligation and mutual benefit. And she saw something else, something that made her gasp. You're not just jealous, Sable breathed. You actually love him. Ione went rigid. What? You love Theron. Not the crown. Not the power. Him. Sable's eyes opened, glowing faintly with the sight. You fell in love with him years ago, when you were both children. Before the political match was ever arranged. You've loved him your whole life, and he's never seen you as anything more than an obligation. The color drained from Ioni's face. How do you know that? I can see it. I can see everything. Sable held her gaze, including the fact that you know, deep down you know, that destroying the bond won't make him love you. He'll just hate you for taking away the only person who ever made him happy. For a moment, something flickered in Ioni's eyes. Doubt, pain, the faintest glimmer of conscience. Then her expression hardened. You're trying to manipulate me. I'm telling you the truth. Use me to break the bond if you want. But it won't give you what you're looking for. It never will. Ione stood frozen for a long moment. The witch watched with hungry impatience. The torches crackled in the silence. Finally, Ione spoke. Begin the ritual. And she was gone. The pain was beyond anything Sable had ever imagined. The witch's blade cut into her arm, shallow, precise, drawing blood that ran down into a silver bowl etched with symbols that hurt to look at. Chanting filled the air, ancient words in a language that predated wolves, predated humans, and predated everything that lived and breathed. And through the bond, still fragile, still healing, Sable felt Theron react. His confusion hit her first, then concern. Then, as the ritual took hold, agony. Sable? Sable. His voice exploded through the connection, stronger than it had been in weeks. The wall she'd built was gone, destroyed by the witch's magic, and suddenly they were linked again, fully, completely, painfully. Theron. They have me. They're trying to... Another cut. Another surge of fire through her veins. Where are you? She tried to answer, tried to send him images, memories, anything that might help him find her. But the pain was too intense, her thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm. Hold on. His voice was desperate, fierce. I'm coming. I swear I'm coming. Just hold on. But the witch's chanting was growing louder. The blood was flowing faster, and Sable could feel the bond beginning to tear, not from her own actions this time, but from the dark magic ripping it apart fiber by fiber. She screamed. In the war room above, Theron screamed with her. He had been studying maps when the pain hit, a sudden, devastating explosion of agony that dropped him to his knees. Corvin rushed to his side, but Theron shoved him away. She's being hurt, he gasped. They're trying to destroy the bond. Who? Where? I don't know. He clutched his chest where the bond had always lived. But I can feel her. She's close. Another wave of pain crashed through him. He saw flashes, stone walls, torchlight, a hunched figure with gnarled hands, a silver bowl filled with blood. The dungeons, he breathed. She's in the castle. Someone brought her to the castle. He didn't wait for Corvin to respond. He ran. The dungeon door exploded inward. Theron stood in the wreckage, his wolf barely contained, his eyes burning with fury that was more animal than human. He took in the scene in an instant. Sable chained to the wall, bleeding from multiple cuts, the witch crouched over a silver bowl. And in the corner, frozen with shock, Ioni Ravencourt. "Get away from her!" Theron snarled. The witch hissed, raising her hands. Dark magic crackled between her fingers. It didn't matter. Theron was faster. His wolf surged forward, and between one heartbeat and the next, the witch was dead. Her throat torn out, her body crumpling to the stone floor. The magic died with her. The silver bowl cracked down the middle. The symbols carved into its surface flickered and went dark. Theron shifted back to human form and crossed to Sable in 3 strides. The chains shattered under his grip. He caught her as she collapsed, lowering her gently to the floor. "I've got you," he whispered. "I've got you. You're safe now." Sable looked up at him, emotion flooding her chest. "You came. I will always come for you." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Always." Behind them, Ioni made a small, broken sound. Theron turned, and his expression went cold. "You," he said. "You did this." Ioni's voice faltered. "I was only trying to torture my mate? To destroy our bond?" He rose, placing himself between Sable and Ione. "To use dark magic that could have killed us both?" "I loved you." The words burst out of Ione like a sob. "I've loved you since we were children. I watched you every day, hoping you'd notice me, hoping you'd see me as something more than a political arrangement. And then you chose her. A servant, a nobody. And you couldn't accept that my heart belonged to someone else." Theron's voice was ice. "So you tried to steal it. I wanted you to be happy. I thought if the bond was gone, happiness isn't something you force." He looked at Sable, and his expression softened. "It's something you find. Something that finds you." Ione crumpled. All the pride, all the ambition, all the cold calculation, it fell away, leaving only a woman whose heart had been broken for so long she'd forgotten what wholeness felt like. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Theron studied her for a long moment. The rage was still there, burning hot and demanding vengeance. But so was something else, an understanding of what desperation could drive a person to do. "Guards," he called. 2 soldiers appeared at the door. "Escort Lady Ione to her chambers. She's under house arrest until I decide what to do with her." He turned back to Ione and his voice dropped. "Your mother will answer for this. She orchestrated it, didn't she?" Ione said nothing, but her silence was answer enough. "Go," Theron said, "and pray. I'm more merciful than my ancestors." The guards led her away. Theron turned back to Sable, gathering her into his arms. "Can you walk?" "I think so." "Then let me take you somewhere safe. Somewhere we can finally talk." Sable nodded, leaning into his warmth. The bond between them pulsed, damaged but alive, fragile but healing. "There's something I need to tell you," she whispered. "About what I am, about what I can do." Theron pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Tell me everything," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." The royal chambers had never felt so quiet. Theron had carried Sable through the castle himself, ignoring the stares of servants and courtiers, ignoring the whispers that would spread through the kingdom by morning. Let them talk. Let the whole world know that the Alpha King had chosen his true mate. Now they sat together on the edge of his bed, the bed where he had spent countless nights aching for her presence. A healer had come and gone, bandaging her wounds, confirming that the dark magic had not done permanent damage, but the scars on her arms would remain. "Tell me," Theron said softly. "Tell me everything." So Sable did. She told him about Calyx, the ancient elder who had saved her from the rogues, who had recognized something in her that she hadn't understood herself. She told him about the sight, the ability to see truth through lies, to perceive the bonds between wolves as visible threads of light. She told him about the Veil Walkers, the lost bloodline of wolves who could manipulate those bonds, and she told him the hardest part. "I can sever mate bonds," she said quietly. "Not just see them, destroy them. That's what I was doing to ours when I ran. I didn't know it at the time, but I was unconsciously tearing us apart." Theron was silent for a long moment. His expression was unreadable. "Calyx told me about your ancestor," Sable continued, her voice trembling. "The Alpha King who executed his mate because she was a Veil Walker, because he feared what she could do to his pack." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "If you're afraid of me, if you think I'm a threat, I understand. I'll leave. I'll disappear. And you'll never have to..." "Stop." The word was gentle but firm. Theron reached out and cupped her face in his hands, tilting her gaze to meet his. "Do you know what I see when I look at you?" he asked. Sable shook her head. "I see the woman who dropped a tray of wine glasses and somehow stole my heart in the same moment. I see the woman who made me laugh for the first time since my father died. I see the woman I love, not despite what she is, but because of it. But the threat? You could sever every bond in my kingdom and I would still choose you." His voice was fierce, certain. "My ancestor was a coward who destroyed something precious because he couldn't control it. I refuse to make the same mistake." Emotion welled in Sable's chest until she could barely breathe. "You mean that?" "I have never meant anything more." Theron pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "You are not a threat, Sable. You are a gift. And I will spend the rest of my life proving that to you." She kissed him then, desperate, relieved, and overflowing with love she had tried so hard to bury. He kissed her back with equal intensity, his hands tangling in her hair, his body pressing against hers as if he could make up for all the weeks they had been apart in a single moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Theron's eyes were glowing with his wolf. "I want to mark you," he said roughly, "properly this time, in front of the entire kingdom. I want everyone to know that you are my queen, my mate, my everything." "What about Ioni, the political alliance?" "The alliance was built on lies and manipulation. It ends now." His jaw tightened. "But first, I need to deal with the ones who orchestrated all of this." Sable's blood ran cold. "Lady Maven. And my mother." Theron's expression darkened. "She started this. She threatened your life to force my hand. She sent her poisoned words to drive you away. Whatever Lady Maven did, my mother enabled it." "What will you do?" He was quiet for a moment. "Then, what I should have done years ago, end her influence over this kingdom, permanently." The confrontation happened at dawn. Theron had summoned the full council to the Great Hall, every noble, every advisor, every person of influence in the kingdom. They gathered in confused clusters, whispering about the events of the previous night. Rumors had already spread. The king had found his secret mate. The queen consort had been arrested. Dark magic had been performed in the castle dungeons. No one knew the full truth. Not yet. Theron entered through the main doors, and the whispers died instantly. He wore black, as always, but there was something different about him today. A fire in his eyes, a certainty in his stride. The broken, desperate man of the past weeks was gone, replaced by a king who finally knew exactly what he wanted. And walking beside him, her hand clasped firmly in his, was Sable. The gasps that rippled through the hall were almost comical. The servant girl, the one the king had been hunting. She was here, in the great hall, dressed in a simple gown of deep blue that somehow made her look more regal than any noble present. "Lords and ladies of Valdrin," Theron announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. I have gathered you here to correct a grave injustice, one that I was complicit in, and one that ends today. He gestured, and guards brought forward 3 women. Ioni Ravencourt, her face pale and tear-streaked. Lady Maven, her expression cold and calculating even now, and Queen Ravenna, whose fury was barely contained behind a mask of aristocratic composure. These 3 women conspired to destroy a sacred mate bond, Theron continued. They kidnapped and tortured an innocent woman. They employed dark magic forbidden by the laws of this kingdom, and they did so for personal gain, for power, for pride, for the delusion that they could control the heart of a king. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. That's a lie, Queen Ravenna snapped. Whatever you think you know. I know everything, Mother. Theron's voice cut through hers like a blade. I know you threatened to execute Sable if I didn't accept the political match. I know you sent your lady-in-waiting to poison her mind against me before the ceremony. I know you enabled Lady Maven's plot, because you were too proud to accept that your son had chosen love over power. Ravenna's face went white. You have no proof. I have something better. Theron turned to Sable. Show them. Sable stepped forward, her stomach dropping with nervousness. She had practiced this with Theron the night before, practiced calling upon the sight deliberately, practiced showing others what she could see. But doing it in front of the entire court was terrifying. She closed her eyes, called upon her gift. When she opened them again, they were glowing, a soft, ethereal light that made several nobles stumble backward in shock. I can see truth, Sable said, her voice steady despite her fear. I can see the bonds between people, the intentions behind their words, the lies they try to hide. She turned to Ravenna. Would you like me to tell them what I see in you, Your Grace? Ravenna's composure cracked. This is witchcraft. She's a witch. Guards. Seize her. The guards answer to me, Theron said calmly. And she is not a witch. She is a Veilwalker. A bloodline so rare it was thought extinct. A gift, not a curse. He stepped forward, addressing the entire hall. 500 years ago, my ancestor murdered a Veilwalker because he feared her power. He started the persecution of wolves with unusual abilities, a persecution that has continued to this day. Theron's voice rang with conviction. That ends now. Under my rule, no one will be punished for the gifts they were born with. No one will be forced to hide who they truly are. The hall was utterly silent. As for these 3 women, Theron continued, turning back to the prisoners, Lady Maven Ravencourt, you are charged with conspiracy, kidnapping, and the use of forbidden dark magic. The penalty is death. Lady Maven's face went gray. Your Majesty, please. However, Theron held up a hand. Your daughter has shown genuine remorse for her part in this scheme. For her sake, I will commute your sentence to exile. You will leave Valdrin within 3 days and never return. If you are found within our borders again, you will be executed on sight. Lady Maven sagged with relief. It was more mercy than she deserved, and everyone knew it. Ioni Ravencourt. Theron's voice softened slightly. You were manipulated by your mother, driven by a love I could never return. That does not excuse your actions, but it explains them. You will be stripped of your title and your claim to the throne. You may remain in the kingdom if you choose, but you will never hold a position of power again. Ioni nodded, her cheeks wet with silent tears. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for your mercy. Finally, Theron turned to his mother. Queen Ravenna stood tall, refusing to cower even now, but there was fear in her eyes, real fear, perhaps for the first time in her life. Mother, Theron's voice was cold. You threatened the life of my mate. You manipulated your own son for political gain. You enabled torture and dark magic under your own roof. By rights, I should execute you alongside Lady Maven. You wouldn't dare. But Ravenna's voice shook. I am your mother. I am the queen. You were the queen. Theron stepped closer, and his eyes held no warmth at all. From this moment forward, you are nothing. Your titles are stripped. Your lands are forfeit. You will live out your remaining days in the Eastern Tower, under guard, with no visitors and no influence over this kingdom. You can't do this to me. Ravenna's composure finally shattered. After everything I did for you, you did nothing for me. Theron's voice dropped to something quiet and devastating. You did everything for yourself, for power, for control. You never loved me, Mother. You loved what I represented. A throne you could rule through, a kingdom you could shape to your will. He turned away from her. Guards, take her to the tower and make sure she never leaves. Ravenna screamed as they dragged her away, wordless, furious, impotent screams that echoed through the hall long after she was gone. When the hall had emptied, when the nobles had scattered to spread word of everything they had witnessed, Theron and Sable stood alone in the center of the vast space. It's over, Sable whispered. It's really over. Not quite. Theron turned to face her, and something shifted in his expression. There's still one thing I need to do. He took her hands in his, got down on one knee. The breath left Sable's lungs. I chose you once in desperation, Theron said quietly. In secret, in shadows, afraid of what the world would think. But I'm not afraid anymore. He looked up at her, and his eyes were shining. Sable, will you be my queen? Not in secret, in front of everyone. Will you let me mark you, claim you, love you for the rest of our lives? Sable's chest ached with joy she couldn't contain. Yes, she breathed. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Theron rose and pulled her into his arms. And there, in the great hall of Valdrin, in the exact spot where he had once spoken another woman's name, he kissed his true mate. The bond between them blazed to life, fully healed, stronger than ever, singing with joy and completion and eternal love. This time, nothing would tear them apart. The marking ceremony took place beneath a full moon. Tradition dictated that mate bonds be formalized in the sacred grove outside the castle, an ancient circle of standing stones where wolves had pledged themselves to one another for thousands of years. Tonight, every noble in the kingdom had gathered to witness their king claim his queen. Sable stood at the center of the circle, dressed in white, her dark hair crowned with moon blossoms. She had never felt more beautiful. She had never felt more terrified. Theron stepped into the circle, and the crowd went silent. He was dressed in formal black, as always, but his expression was anything but cold. He looked at Sable like she was the only person in the world, like the hundreds of witnesses around them simply didn't exist. Are you ready? He murmured as he reached her. I've been ready since the moment I met you. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that she had fallen in love with so long ago. Then he turned to address the gathered wolves. Tonight I claim Sable as my mate, he declared, his voice carrying across the grove. Not as a political arrangement, not as a strategic alliance, but as my choice, my love, my equal. He turned back to her, cupping her face in his hands. Before the moon and stars, before the spirits of our ancestors, before every wolf in this kingdom, I claim you, Sable. I give you my heart, my soul, my life. From this moment until my last breath, I am yours. Sable's voice shook as she responded. Before the moon and stars, before the spirits of our ancestors, before every wolf in this kingdom, I claim you, Theron. I give you my heart, my soul, my life. From this moment until my last breath, I am yours. The bond pulsed between them, warm and golden and perfect. Then Theron leaned in and pressed his lips to her neck. She felt his fangs extend, felt the sharp pressure against her skin, felt pain, then pleasure, then something beyond both. His mark seared into her flesh, branding her as his for all eternity. She gasped, clutching his shoulders as the sensation overwhelmed her. Through the bond, she felt his own ecstasy, his wolf howling with triumph. When he pulled back, his eyes glistened with emotion. "My queen," he breathed. Sable reached up and pulled him down for a kiss. The crowd erupted in cheers, but she barely heard them. All she could feel was Theron, his joy, his love, his complete and utter devotion. They were one now. Nothing could ever change that. The celebration lasted until dawn. Wolves danced and feasted and howled at the moon, celebrating not just the royal mating but the new era it represented. The rigid hierarchies of the past were crumbling. A servant had become queen. A veil walker had been accepted instead of feared. Change was coming to Valdrin, and for the first time in generations, it felt like hope. As the first rays of sunlight broke over the horizon, Theron and Sable slipped away from the festivities. They walked hand in hand through the castle gardens, retracing the paths where they had first fallen in love. "I never thought this would happen," Sable admitted. "Even after you found me, even after everything, I kept waiting for something to go wrong, for you to change your mind. I could never change my mind about you." Theron stopped walking, turning to face her. "You're not just my mate, Sable. You're the reason I believe in anything at all." "What do you mean?" He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Before you, I was empty. The crown was a burden I never wanted. The kingdom was a cage I couldn't escape. I went through the motions of living without ever feeling alive." He took her hands in his. "Then you dropped that tray of wine glasses and something inside me woke up. You made me want to be better, to do better, to build a kingdom worth believing in." Sable's breath hitched with emotion. "Theron, I know the road ahead won't be easy. There will be nobles who resent your rise. There will be challenges we can't predict. But I also know that with you beside me, I can face anything." He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "We were both hiding when we met, both wearing masks, both afraid of being seen. But we found each other anyway. We chose each other anyway. And we keep choosing each other," Sable whispered. "Every day, for the rest of our lives." "Every day," he agreed. "For the rest of our lives." 6 months later, the kingdom of Valdrin had transformed. Under Theron and Sable's joint rule, the old laws restricting wolves with unusual abilities had been abolished. A new academy had been established to train young Veilwalkers and others with rare gifts. Calyx had emerged from his centuries of isolation to lead the academy, finally healing from the wound that had driven him into exile. Ioni Ravencourt had surprised everyone by becoming one of the academy's most dedicated supporters. She had found purpose in helping others develop their abilities, perhaps as penance, perhaps as genuine growth. Sable had forgiven her, though the scars from the ritual would always remain. Lady Maven had departed into exile, never to return. Queen Ravenna remained in the Eastern Tower, her influence utterly destroyed. Occasionally, Sable would catch Theron staring in the direction of the tower with something like grief in his eyes. She never asked him about it. Some wounds were too deep for words. But overall, the kingdom thrived. And so did its rulers. "You're glowing," Theron observed one morning as they breakfasted together in their chambers. "More than usual, I mean." Sable looked down at her plate, hiding a smile. "Am I?" "You are." He set down his cup, studying her with sudden intensity. "Sable, is there something you want to tell me?" She had planned to wait, had planned to make it a grand announcement with ceremony and witnesses. But looking at him now, her mate, her king, her everything, she couldn't keep the secret another moment. "I'm pregnant," she said. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Theron was out of his chair, crossing to her in 2 strides, pulling her up into an embrace that lifted her feet off the floor. Truly? His voice cracked. We're having a child? We're having a child. He kissed her, deep and joyful and overflowing with love. When he finally pulled back, emotion streamed freely down his face. I never thought I'd have this, he whispered. A mate who loves me, a child of my own, a kingdom that feels like home. He cupped her face in his hands. You gave me all of this, Sable. You saved me. We saved each other, she corrected gently. That's what mates do. 9 months later. The baby was born on the night of a full moon, a girl with her mother's dark hair and her father's amber eyes. They named her Aurelia, meaning golden light, because that was exactly what she was. As Sable held her daughter for the first time, Theron sitting beside her on the bed, his hand gentle on her shoulder, she thought about everything that had led to this moment. The ceremony where she had first felt the bond break, the desperate flight into the Blackwood, the weeks of hiding, of training, of learning who she truly was, the enemies who had tried to tear them apart, and the choices that had brought them back together. It had been a journey of pain and fear and impossible odds, but it had also been a journey of love, stubborn, persistent, unbreakable love that had refused to die no matter how many times the world tried to snuff it out. She's perfect, Theron breathed, stroking Aurelia's tiny cheek with one finger. Absolutely perfect. She has your eyes, Sable murmured. She'll break hearts someday. Not until she's at least 100, he said firmly. I'll lock her in a tower first. Sable laughed softly. We don't lock people in towers anymore, remember? That was the whole point of changing the kingdom. I'll make an exception for any wolf who tries to court my daughter. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching their child sleep. Through the bond, Sable could feel Theron's emotions, joy so pure it was almost painful, wonder at the tiny life they had created, fierce protectiveness that would burn anyone who threatened his family to ash. I love you, he said quietly. I know. She leaned into his warmth. I can feel it. Good. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Because I plan to spend the rest of our lives making sure you never forget it. Outside the castle, the kingdom of Valdrin stretched beneath the moonlight, vast and wild and full of wolves who were finally learning that love was not a weakness to be feared, but a strength to be embraced. The Alpha King had chosen his mate, and against all odds, they had found their happily ever after. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments. I read every single one, and your support means more than you know. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time.